is up, everybody? Welcome to week 14 of Look Who's Chalking, my last little chance to enjoy any little bit of a bye because the Wonkas are out now. I saw Slugsworth at the deli earlier today. He's getting ready to really throw lineups out there because he knows the time for buckets are over. Starting next week, it's all teams every week. You better have 8,000 lineups in to find that correct assortment of games. But, last week, I realized when I watch other shows, I'm like, I don't want to hear about last week when I'm already on to next week. But I will say we had some relatively good assessments. I don't know how I didn't win more. I did. I'm starting to do this thing where I'm tracking. No, I didn't really win. I was like, hey, good. I said, I got a lot of that right. I checked. I'm like, why am I not in the money? There's a random thing where sometimes I think I'm garbage and then I'm in the cash. And then I've been telling you this for years, as long as I've been telling you the difference between Ayuk and Debo and A.J. Brown and Higgins. But not as good as a week as I would have thought. But last week I said the potential bust would be Denver and Houston. So don't build these crazy stacks from there. And I bet you there's going to be a ton of points in that New Orleans-Detroit game. So, the weird calls were kind of right. And I don't know. You know what it is? There was 4 defenses with 20 points each. And that was annoying. But anyway, it was a week where I kept a side eye on the optimal lineup because I know you always bring that up. And on Sundays, they're updating that in real time until Debo scored the 3rd touchdown. So you would think, okay, he's got 2 touchdowns. The game's almost over. That's what he's got. So until that 3rd touchdown was scored, the optimal lineup was once again a Brock Purdy unstacked lineup.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
With Pittman and Alec Pierce.
Yeah. And I think that's what I'm going to do my leverage column on this week. The amount of times, 2 things. I want to look at naked quarterbacks, and I want to look at times that there are 2 skill position players from a team.
He wants to look at naked quarterbacks. I mean, I don't want to take the simple.
I love
it's just
the look
way
of a
it
naked
comes.
quarterback.
I want to look at naked quarterbacks.
I want to look at them.
Yeah,
I want to see. I want Jimmy Garoppolo's first, and then I'm just no. And then the Pierce Pittman. And Pierce should have never been on your radar. He is not a real fantasy asset. That was fluky. But the Pierce Pittman thing, we've seen this multiple times now, where we have 2 skill position players from the same team without the quarterback. And I think my theory is it only happens on these bye weeks, 10 or 11 game slates. But I'm gonna research that this week. I'll come back to you with my findings next week. But the Purdy thing, I'll tell you exactly why I didn't do well. Yeah. I'll tell you exactly why I didn't do well is because I always tell you I don't worry about ownership at quarterback, and I just didn't listen to my own advice this week. I'm like, well, the entire field's going to be on Brock Purdy. He was the cash quarterback. I'm like, I think he's a good play, but I like a lot of these quarterback plays. So I just didn't play nearly enough Brock Purdy, and that's why I didn't do well.
I was with you, man. I thought more of the game was going to look like those first 2 drives, and I thought maybe there would be some bad weather. I kind of felt I was with you on that, and it just went the complete opposite direction. And I'll eat that. You know what? I don't mind that. That was my actual assessment, that everybody's way too high on him. This Eagles D is just going to be way too pumped up. And you know what? I don't mind taking a loss like that. That's not really much of a screw up. We thought Purdy wasn't going to do as well as he did, and he did. So I can
exactly
handle that.
And you turn the page, you feel okay about it, and you're on to week 14. And as you mentioned, we do have 2 more buys this week, and which is weird. I don't like week 14 buys, but what it does do is allow us to have a smaller slate still, especially because for some weird reason there's 2 Monday night games this week, so we're still right in that range of 10 or 11 games. You mentioned it last week for the sweet spot. Carnival's coming soon to a DFS street near you. As we are entering that time of year.
No, you better warm up for next week. I'm making you do it.
Oh man, I got to remember the voice. We'll start the show next week with ring announcer Gary. He'll be here,
and I'm gonna play some Carnival-esque music underneath. So we're gonna start where everyone's gonna start, and that's Tampa Bay at Atlanta. No, it's the classic Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes in Kansas City for the 58th straight game. I've never seen Patrick Mahomes play in Buffalo. I never will see him play in Buffalo. The last time must have been when he was in high school. I've seen 58 straight games in KC between these 2 teams. The last couple of regular season games, Allen's played great, and they've won on the road, and they've put up points in the process. KC is weird, man, with this offense. I could have swore they would have had it ironed out by now. I really thought that was going to be the case after watching the game against Vegas. Okay, Rashid Rice is going. Pacheco's playing well. All right, they got it. Kelsey, Rice, Pacheco, they're going to figure this out. And then they ran into issues once again in Green Bay. So what are we getting here?
Yeah, and let's not sell Jordan Love and the Packers short. Been really impressive. Not on this main slate, so nothing we really have to dive into this week, but been a really impressive second half of the season for Jordan Love. Maybe has the goods. And, that was just a good win. I was all over Green Bay +6 at home there.
Not the win. I'm not talking about that.
No, for sure.
About the
for sure.
Of
I just think
offense.
It was a tougher spot than we thought. But yes, I agree. I mean, really the lack of, we've been talking about how Kelsey has lost a step for sure. And then the lack of skill position players otherwise is rearing its ugly head. Mahomes is the ultimate talent elevator. I do believe that, but he just doesn't have enough talent to even elevate right now. So, and the other thing is the one guy that he can, and maybe they could work together is Rashid Rice, and the coaching staff is just so freaking stubborn. Like he's putting up good numbers on 50% of snaps. Like this guy should be out there for all 2 wide receiver sets. It makes no sense. He's far and away the most talented guy. I like going back there. I'm curious. Well, I guess I could take a look. I'm curious how much ownership is condensing on this game, because I was just saying, to just kind of paint a little bit of a macro view on this slate. I think there's a ton of ugly game environments, but if you look at the 4 o'clock games, those are probably the 4 that I'm most interested in. I'm on our old friend NFLweather.com right now. It's going to be really bad weather throughout the country this weekend. And it's not just rain. There's going to be a lot of rain, but there's going to be a lot of wind. But of course, all of those are the 1 o'clock games. So, Texans, Jets, bad weather. Panthers, Saints, well, that's dome, doesn't matter. Jaguars, Browns, bad weather. Colts, Bengals, bad weather. Lions, Bears, no rain, but 20 miles per hour winds. Bucks, Falcons, also dome, doesn't matter. So, but then you go to the 4 o'clock games, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, no wind. So it's like, plus the better game environments. So I'd imagine chalk's going to condense around these games. Probably this one the most. It looks like the field wants to spend down at quarterback again, which I understand. So you might be able to get both Allen and Mahomes at nice discounts. Right now, we're only having Josh Allen at 2% owned in DraftKings tournaments. Mahomes is around 6-7%. So I think from like a full game stack perspective, you might be able to get a little bit of discounts here, which, makes things interesting. I'd imagine though, Pacheco, and then, some of the receivers and things like that. Rashid Rice looks like chalky right now. Those guys are getting steamed up.
Yeah, absolutely. And that makes sense. And those 4 o'clock games all kind of look like they have some major potential there. When you get these home games in Los Angeles with the Chargers, it just seems like every time they have a home game, the scoring's going to happen back and forth, whether it was the Dallas game or whether it was the Detroit game. But it is a little bit different now because they've lost some players. And wait, do they get Palmer back this week? No, right? I'm pretty sure they don't.
He was activated. His window opened up. I don't know if he's going to be available though. So
it's just in
it'd
these
be big
games,
for them if they do that. Hopeful to play soon. Designated for return. I don't know if that means he's playing this week. My guess would be that he's out this week, but I'm trying to read on the go here.
Yeah, we'll see as it goes. Yeah. But if he's active, well, then again, everybody's going to play him if he's active. So because they have him at the minimum, so he's going to be woo.
I don't think he's going to play. It sounds like if when asked if he's going to play this week, said I don't know. I'll be ready to play soon. I've got 21 days to return, so within 21 days I'll be back on the field. Doesn't sound like he's going to play this week. I don't think. I think I'd be
the
pretty
classic
surprising.
Every week. It's between 5,500 and 5,900. Javonte Williams.
Yeah,
exactly. Spot for him, man.
Pretty good spot for him. Yeah, I don't mind attacking. I don't mind attacking this game for sure. I also think, listen, I think we finally have hit the maybe Austin Eckler is a step slow, and I finally have come to admit that, and I just want to capitulate on me being wrong on Keenan Allen and Austin Eckler, where I was into Eckler this year, was not into Keenan. But if there's ever an Austin Eckler week, it's when they finally tank his price down against the Denver Broncos. Because yes, the Broncos defense has been much better. They're still pretty vulnerable against the run. Plus they get this coach speak this week. Kellen Moore comes out. We want to get Eckler more involved. 7.6 for Austin Eckler for what we saw the ceiling be over the last couple of years is a really good price. I'm very, very, very interested in going there. Don't know what his ownership's looking like. Let's take a look.
Nobody's playing him. Nobody's playing.
Yeah,
him.
6% right now, man. That's a great tournament play. It's like this is it. This is the Eckler spot. If it doesn't happen this week, I'll officially call him cooked. But I think this is the spot.
It might just be a rusty year with that rusty high ankle sprain that maybe he came back from and just hasn't had some juice. We'll see. What is he? He's like 28 or something?
Yeah. In running back, it's a dog years. In running back years, he's 50.
Seriously, he was playing with Melvin Gordon back there, remember?
Yeah.
It was Melvin Gordon in him, so.
Eckler is 28, yeah, and he just turned 28 in May, so next year he'll be his age 29. He's 5'10". He's listed at 200. He's probably like 190. Yeah, he's a little guy.
You need tough for durability. If you're getting a little guy, you better get a young one who's got plenty of roach left in those legs.
Oh, baby,
he's just the matchup proof chalker roach. Go ahead, give me Cleveland. I'll take 20 carries and get over 100 total and a touchdown. No problem. The roach
I think
really
the chalker roach. I think the chalker roach is a great play this week. Tough matchup in Baltimore, but again, like the way he's getting stuff done through the air, and for whatever reason, DraftKings does not price him up into the AK range where he should be for this role. So like you mentioned, Cleveland still scored 20 points. This is not as tough a matchup as Cleveland. It's still a tough matchup, but not as tough a matchup as Cleveland. And even got to over 4 yards a carry and 21 carries against Cleveland. Yeah, the Chalker Roach is a great play. And he's going to come in under 10% because you know why? The whole field's going to play Zach Moss again. There's people are going to find the money to Christian McCaffrey because they're just going to against Seattle. That's a spot people want to play Christian McCaffrey. You mentioned the Javonte Williams tier, Charbonnet if Kenneth Walker doesn't play, Pacheco's going to be chalky, Bijan's still underpriced, Rashad White's still under 7K, Mixon's way too cheap for what we just saw 6-1. So like all those guys, Breece Hall's even coming through with ownership right now. All those guys are going to be quite owned.
My God, are there running backs this week?
Yeah, there's a ton. So Chalker Roach though falling through the cracks. So obviously this is
that's what they do.
This is the home of the literally that is what they do, right? That's what and they never die. They fall through the cracks and they just live underground until they're ready to come back up and ruin your life. And that's what the Chalker Roach has been doing post injury here.
I do want to say the Rams have potential to be really bad some weeks. They played a couple winnable games against beatable opponents, and I want you guys all to secretly root against Keaton Mitchell having a good primetime game with everybody watching, because when the Ravens get up on a team is when I really want to have Mitchell. The same thing you saw with A-Chain in the second half of that Dolphins game, any sort of potential blowout. My particular feeling, and you saw this a couple weeks back, is that Mitchell will just get the full run in his second half if they can be up in games. But we need him not to go off on Sunday night oh, no. I meant that. No, we're good. We're clear. I'm sorry.
Yeah, you're good.
I was thinking 2 weeks ahead, actually. I thought they had a bye.
Yeah,
my bad.
Yeah.
Brain
you're good.
Fart.
I don't disagree. And it's interesting, like with Achane and with Keaton Mitchell, and it's almost counterintuitive because you would think, oh, we're up. We want to run out the clocks with our veterans, right? So like, let's run out the clock with Mostert and Jeff Wilson. Let's run out the clock with Gus Edwards. But I think these teams have bigger aspirations. Those are their goal line backs. They're older backs. They want to keep them healthy. This is a chance to not only get your younger backs work, but it's when the defense is, more lax. They're not expecting you to be using these kind of pass catching / scat backs / et cetera. And, they really can kind of carve up these big boxes compared to the way,
massive,
the big box. I want to look at look at naked quarterbacks and I want to investigate
that big box.
I want to investigate some big box.
The Larry David, huge.
Oh man, we've already had a Seinfeld and a curve reference.
The problem does not lie with his small penis, but rather your large vagina. And then he just, after he says that, he just calmly just goes, and then he goes, is that what he did? You said he had the small penis. You got the large vagina. I just love that follow.
It's
He goes,
so
yeah.
good. It's so good. Man, it's some of the funniest shit of all time. God,
Absolutely.
truly.
Mitchell, I'm 1000% gonna have him,
Yeah,
which
listen,
is gonna be non Chakaroach lineups, obviously, but especially if weather is gonna be an issue there as well. These Rams have gotten cracked in multiple games. If they go down second half, Big Mitchell, that definitely is something
I think there's a
that can
handful
happen.
of 4K running backs you can throw in your like these are large field tournament plays, so probably not in our big four. Maybe Keaton Mitchell if you're feeling spicy, but I think you got Keaton Mitchell, Roshan Johnson, who took over that lead back role, and it gets a Detroit team. As we mentioned, the defense has been really bad. If you're to attack a 1:00 game, I'm kind of interested in that one. And then also, I think you could throw Ty Chandler in the pool, coming off the bye, maybe, with classic. Madison's been completely ineffective. Still a pretty good matchup against the Raiders. Classic, like off the bye, new, let's get the rookie to flip the role. So I think Ty Chandler's only 4,600. Like, I think all three of those guys actually belong in your player pool this week. So yeah, I mean, you mentioned running backs, like there's a million backs in every different tier. Yeah. So
Wide receivers against the Tampa Bay Bucks. Jonathan Mingo had like 60 yards last week, and 60
I called
for
it, man.
Jonathan
10,
Mingo.
10 targets. He was in my cheap wide receiver volume article. He was like the only cheap 3K guy I played last week.
He was in my anytime that I played Rashad White, that was my way to justify
to
it
get the
by
correlation.
doing However, 60 or 70 yards for Mingo is like 170 yards for a quality wide receiver.
Yeah.
Look at the price we're getting with Drake London going up against that secondary, and there are going to be plenty of opportunities at 4,700. And he had a stretch there where he was performing. They need to be pushed a little bit to force them to throw. And Tampa Bay's not all that bad. I mean, Evans is going off every single week. They'll be able to put up some points.
Yeah, and part of this is due to the fact that there's just no value on this slate from a receiver standpoint. But Drake London right now is the chalkiest receiver on the slate, and he should be. He's 4,600. He's playing Tampa Bay. This is a spot we've been attacking like crazy, but it's not just him. So of our top 7 owned receivers right now in ETR, 5 of them were in my cheap wide receiver volume article. Drake London under 5K. Jonathan Mingo is also up there again at 3,500 because his target share has been over like 24% for 4 straight weeks. Elijah Moore because of the 4,500 with the Joe Flacco narrative. And Rashee Rice doesn't qualify, but he's third. So he's 5,400. And 5,400 at receiver this week is kind of a value play. Because again, there's only like 7 guys total qualified for my list this week. So that tells you, like, you could do a quick exercise based off the amount of guys that qualify for my list, what kind of value you have on this slate. There's not much receiver value. While we talk about all these running back spots, there's not that much receiver value. And it's a week where you might want to pay up for running back because you have CMC, you have Kamara, you have Eckler, all in great spots. So people are going to go down to these receivers to afford some of these guys. So, yeah, I mean, London's going to be popular. Rashee Rice will be popular. Mingo, again, will be popular. Elijah Moore. So JSN also coming through like 15%. Like people are starving for this wide receiver value.
So I'm just wondering, like, with all these good high-priced running backs, does that mean not as many people are going to be playing high-priced receivers? Like, is this the week to play high-priced receivers to try to beat the crowd who's going to have 3 6,800 running backs in their lineups?
I actually think yes. So only Keenan Allen right now is coming through with a lot of ownership at the high end. Okay, so Stephon Diggs, 2%, right? I mean, we'll manually adjust that up, but that's like what the algorithm is giving, 2%. Justin Jefferson, no one's going to play, and and not only that, you get Justin Jefferson who's close to being ready to go before the bye. 8,500 for Justin Jefferson is a true $1,000 discount, right? Justin Jefferson is a 9,500 player. Now you're banking on Josh Dobbs. I get that.
Yeah,
but if no one's going to play Justin Jefferson, dude, I love just taking a shot. Maybe I'll do it in one of my big 4 too, but like on Justin Jefferson, Devontae Adams mini stack, I think that's super sharp. No one's playing either of those guys. Both of them have a squeaky wheel narrative. Both of them are underpriced. I don't think
he can get 8 catches with this quarterback. I think like 5 or 6 is.
We just saw Jamar Chase do it with Browning, right? Dobbs was capable for the whole first half of the season. The other thing, when you have players like this on the field with bad quarterbacks, they just manufacture touches for these guys. That's what they did to Jamar Chase last Monday night. I could see
But
it
that's
happening in this
different. He
spot.
had no running capability. They can't scheme up like all like that. Dobbs had like 5 straight weeks with a rushing touchdown. Browning just has to stand there and give a wide receiver opportunity to go wild. If that was the case, then yeah, it's just more so the Dobbs style. You know, you could probably convince me if they started Nick Mullins before Dobbs. It's just because Dobbs, I think that the mobility is actually what I think will not allow him to just sit there all day and pepper him with short targets. It just seems that way, you know?
Yeah, no, I get
Plus,
it.
he likes
I think,
Hawkinson a lot.
yeah, he does. I just think from like in the millie, I think Jefferson's a great play. I think all of these. So I think all of these guys are. Let me break it down. I think Jefferson's awesome because I think he's underpriced. But Amon-Ra under 10%. Not the best matchup though. Bears defense has been stingy. This is in Chicago. Goff second half has not looked great. So do with that what you will. Yeah. Evans for some reason isn't getting played. I get the Falcons are a good solid pass defense, but Mike Evans has like been an absolute stud. 6% right now. Jamar Chase also under 10%. He just showed he could do this. Nico Collins, you're not playing against the Jets, but no one's playing him. Devontae Adams, 6%. Cooper Kupp, 1%. Pittman is then your first guy that you're getting some ownership on. 15% on Pittman. 5% on Puka Nacua, 8% on Chris Olave, and then you get down under 7K. Ayuk and Debo both around 10%. So like that whole tier over 6'9", no one's getting played except Michael Pittman and Keenan Allen. No one. So it's a complete interesting way to play this slate. Really, really interesting.
Yeah, it seems like there are so many plays on this one. You know, I know many of these 1 o'clock matchups, they don't look that enticing, but the slate as a whole, combining the feel like all those San Fran players, all the players from that KC game, then the Chargers game can obviously have so it just seems like the games that do look like they have solid environments have some really damn pricey players in all of them, and it's tough. It's going to be pretty tough.
Yeah, no, it is a tough week, and I'm excited to like really mess around with construction stuff tomorrow and Saturday because I think finding that edge will be important. I actually think this is a really good week to try to get away from chalk. Like I understand McCaffrey because he's McCaffrey. We just saw what he did against the Seahawks on Thanksgiving night. Like this is a great spot for him. And I don't want to fade him totally, but I think everyone else that's condensing around ownership, Josh Jacobs is looking at 20%, Pacheco's looking at 18, Bijan's 18. And then we talked about Keenan Allen already 20, like anyone that's getting up to 20 plus on this slate, unless they're a full value play that I really believe in. I think this is like a great week to be like contrarian GPP, bro. I really do.
Yeah, I'm actually with you. There are so many good ones that I can pass on those and have more that I like.
Would you fade CMC or because I think that's the decision point on the slate because he's the one guy that's gonna.
I don't mind. I think now that they got a couple of those big wins, I don't see them riding him for 30 touches here. Like they just put a lot of work on him.
Yeah. I think that's a really interesting point. If you also recall against the Eagles, I know they had the game in hand, but earlier in the season when they had games in hand, they were still riding out CMC. We saw some Elijah Mitchell touches for like the first time in a long time in the second half. And now they are like really in a good spot, right? Post bye, they had that little rough spot, but now like, they beat the Eagles. They have 3 losses. They should win most of the rest of their games, and I think they have their eyes on the bigger picture at this point. They're as healthy as they've been, so if they're trying to keep his body healthy for the playoffs now that we're in December, I wouldn't be surprised at all. So if you're just looking for reasons to fade, I get it.
This is classic Ayuk week, by the way. This is classic.
Yeah, and I like both those guys because Ayuk only 10%, Debo only 10%. I agree with you on Ayuk, by the way. That was a blowout in that Sunday night game. I think in this game we'll see Seattle push a little bit more because Geno just clearly was not healthy on that Sunday night game that Thursday night game on Thanksgiving, which was predictable. And that's why the Niners -7 was one of the best bets of the year. But I do think what we saw with Geno in Dallas, I'm not saying he's going to be that good every week, but he's closer to that than he was that night in San Francisco. So all we need is him to push a little bit. And then we get some high upside on the San Francisco passing game too.
Yeah, definitely. And the first thing that's standing out to me, if it's like, okay, well, even if your projections have to be manually adjusted, you're telling me that I could have Stephon Diggs in a game against KC that they have to win. They have to win. Josh Allen's going to lock in on him. Yeah,
and it makes it easier to eat the Rashee Rice chalk, right? Because then you want that correlation. And we always talk about it. Like, take a 20% Rashee Rice, fine, but let me find correlation in that same game. Let's get contrarian and chalky environments, right? Okay, Rashee Rice and Pacheco are going to be owned. Let me do a Josh Allen, Stephon Diggs stack with Rashee Rice, and that's no one's playing Allen or Diggs, and now I'm getting exposure to the highest over/under game on the slate with one chalky piece and two contrarian pieces with super high ceiling. So that's just like basic GPP 101, but I think it's a really smart play. Now the scary part on Diggs is we haven't seen a ceiling game that pays off his close to 9K tag in a while, and this is not an easy matchup. L'Jarius Sneed is legit, but Diggs for the most part has been a matchup proof type receiver that gets touches no matter what. So I think he's a really good play and no ownership.
And is Kincaid drawing ownership? Because everyone
loved him until
he kind of screwed them a little bit.
No, he's not right now. I'm not seeing like any ownership on tight ends above 4.3. People are definitely going to the value tier this week. That's led by Isaiah Likely because he's 3.5 still with no Mark Andrews against the Rams. So looks like he's going to be popular. Njoku also seems to keep projecting well. And then people are going down to like Cade Otton and those guys down there. People are, again, all those, because there's only 4 legit value receivers this week, people are going to try to punt at tight end, right? So, I don't think so. I'm not seeing ownership on, I see like 8% on Kelsey, nothing on Laporta, nothing on Hawkinson, around 8% on Kittle, nothing on Kincaid, nothing on Evan Ingram. Well, you're not going to touch the Jaguars this week probably. But not, so it definitely another spot where if you want to pay up to be contrarian, you can do it at tight end too.
So would you suggest the 0-1 o'clock lineup and then all guys from the 4s and watch how far you have to, because you're in dead last. You're in actual dead last. You're the last person in the tournament. Can you imagine the story of going from dead last to first place?
Yeah, I don't think it's like actually a viable strategy. Like in all likelihood, you probably want at least one player from the early slate. There's just too many games there. But if you wanted to be super concentrated towards the 4s this week, I'd understand it. I definitely would understand it.
Yeah. I don't know. How about has anyone drawn your attention for the Men's Warehouse? I was just befuddled.
There's a lot of options.
The only thing I'm upset about is it was in my head. I mentioned it on the show. If you're not going to play Zach Moss, play Derrick Henry. And he went off. I don't know how I didn't Men's Warehouse that, because I was kind of
that was the other spot I ended up messing up on. That I did not get enough Derrick Henry last week, which I don't know how.
And now what did they price Zach Moss at?
Yeah, Moss is going to still be the chalkiest play on the week. He's like at 40% still. A pretty good matchup with the Bengals. They brought him up without 1,300. He's 5'9". Yeah, so he's still the chalkiest play.
It's not that hard for me to stay away from.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, the role is still amazing. It was obviously disappointing last week. I haven't decided yet which way I'd go.
But everyone's acting like the early season Zach Moss is guaranteed to come back. He wasn't back last week, and maybe there's just a chance early in the year was the best he'll ever play, and you're not going to really see that again. Yeah, no, I mean, that's certainly possible. I don't know. I just think, like, again, you probably want to lean into volume, like the same way we're still willing to play the chalk roach in these bad matchups. Now, I think he's has a better role and is more talented because he's got like a Kamara quality. They'll throw him 7 screens a game, and he has that ability to really carve out a role in the passing game. Moss is kind of a bruiser up the middle. Speaking of Kamara, once again, fully dependent of if check down Carly is playing or not, because if he's playing, I'm very interested in Kamara. If he's not playing, I'm not even in a great matchup with Carolina. I don't think I'm interested in Kamara at 8-2 with Jameis Winston, right? Because the whole thesis of Kamara this season is that pass game role. So I don't think, but I do think if Carr's in, I don't think Kamara is going to get that much attention. 10% right now, it's not bad. Nope. So it's like McCaffrey's the fullback protecting us from ownership for Kamara. If people are going to go 8,200, then they're just going to go 9,200 for McCaffrey. But no, I do actually have a Men's Warehouse pick of the week. And we mentioned there's so many running backs. I don't even want to touch that. There's just so many. And maybe you have someone in mind. But one of the running backs that is getting a lot of ownership, in fact, right now, is coming through with the third most ownership after Moss and CMC, is Josh Jacobs. I mentioned he's 20% because he's 6'8", pretty good spot. I mentioned I think Devontae Adams not only due,
but he's far underpriced for what that ceiling is. So you get 7-6 Devontae Adams in a pretty good matchup with the Vikings that have given up some big games through the air consistently. We are, even post Antonio Pierce, those two of those last three games before the bye, he had 13 targets still. There's going to be another 40-point game for Devontae Adams this season. Post bye at home against the Vikings. If Dobbs can push it all, if we can get Dobbs like closer, he doesn't have to be what he was in that Bears game, but closer to what he was on the Cardinals. Devontae Adams is having a huge week, and he's so cheap for what Devontae Adams is, and you're getting direct leverage off of Josh Jacobs, which I think is great. I don't think Jacobs is a bad play, but to me, he's more of like a Rachaad White cash play to me this week. So I love me some Devontae Adams at 7.5, and that's, the thing with Devontae Adams at 7.5, and there's a lot of these receivers, but like that is literally getting into discount territory. Like you're going into the warehouse for Adams at 7.5. So it's all slate dependent. Because you think like, oh, I'm still going over 7K, but for a superstar that has can produce like a 9K player, I really like Adams here.
Well, I'm sorry to make you guys spend this much. Like, this is the most expensive suit at the store, but you're going to be the only person wearing it. No one else is going to be wearing this suit, like Gary just mentioned. But I got to go to Diggs. In my opinion, with the season on the line, he's getting one of those games where he's getting 20 targets, 11 catches for one of those. Like, if we're going down chucking it to Diggs. Diggs has done well in matchup versus the Jets when they got Sauce Gardner. You can just look at game. I'm not so much worried about that. Is Josh Allen going to be slinging? My only slight worry is this offensive coordinator when they have a lead. They are kind of committing to the run to save Allen from himself. But if this one does turn into a back and forth, we saw last game against the Eagles. Is it going to be another Gabe Davis, Shakir, Cook out of the backfield? Or is there going to be a big one finally where Diggs goes wild? I'm going to veer in that direction with Buffalo's season essentially on the line. You'd have to check the exact record, but they're at 500. If they go under 500, they'll probably have to win out. They need this game, and I think they're pulling out all the stops, which means it's going to be Diggs. So he's my men's warehouse pick of the week. Stephon Diggs.
I'm surprised, and maybe because its pricing's too efficient, but like outside of Pacheco and Rashee Rice, you're not getting ownership on this game. So I think, including the quarterbacks, and again, I'm not worrying about that, but like we finally saw now, Josh Allen was optimal a couple weeks ago. Like we're starting to see a little bit of these spend up quarterbacks get into those 40-point range again. I can see that happening here. Looks like weather's going to hold up in Kansas City this week. I think that's important for this slate. 41 degrees, 10 miles per hour winds, according to old reliable NFLweather.com. That's totally fine for a December game. I really like attacking that Bills side with a Chiefs spring back or something like that. I think it's because ownership's not condensing the way I thought it would around that game. I think that's a pretty good place to look here.
And maybe it will. Maybe it will. All of a sudden, at the end of the week, people start, feeling a little bit different towards that game. Like, maybe they see a couple commercials for Mahomes, Allen, and they're like, you know what, that is going to be the game. These last couple of 4:30 games, there was way more ownership than originally people thought. Like, people thought that many of those Bills weren't going to be that owned in that game versus the Eagles. They were all very owned. And then even last week, I think the projections for Debo and everything missed low. So maybe there will be more than expected.
I think if it does, it's going to be on the cheap. It's going to be on the cheap side because like Mahomes right now already projecting for 6-7%. So Pacheco and Rice already also projecting for big ownership. Kelsey's getting close to around 10%. They're at home coming off the bye. The Bills defense has been banged up all year. You could throw on them a little bit. I think like if you're talking about regular guy narrative, also, Mahomes is cheap. Is Mahomes cheaper than Allen? He's cheaper than Allen, right? So I think he'd be the guy on that Chiefs side would be the side that gets steamed up more because there's already some chalk on that side. So I still think you're going to be kind of safe with the Bills as another way. But yeah, I do think there's definitely a chance Mahomes when we turn over the cards on Sunday is like over 10%, which is a lot for a quarterback, obviously.
All right, cool. We'll see how it goes. If any listeners out there want to have the balls to the all 4 o'clock lineup, please screenshot you being in dead last place, and then let me know if you end up in the cash, because that's one hell of a journey. That who knows? Maybe I'll do one of those in the millionaire, see how far I can go. All right, everybody, thank you so much. Week 14, end of the bye weeks. Gary's going to start working on that boxing announcer carnival voice, and you better start kind of figuring out what you want to do, because the big boys are coming into town. It ain't going to be unstacked Purdy anymore. It's going to be some 3,200 receiver you've never heard of, but the 85th 150 max lineup was able to scratch that corner in the nickel tournament or something. The quick slant, the deep out, you name it, they'll be playing it. Slugsworth's coming to town next week, so enjoy these final buys like I typically do. All right, everyone, make sure you're subscribed here on YouTube if you're watching. If you're listening on your favorite audio platform, where are you listening? Are you listening on Pandora, iHeartRadio? Well, make sure you're subscribed there as well. Let everybody know about it. Only a few weeks left, another season, but it's gone pretty well. Think we've helped you become better players this year, in my opinion.
Agreed.
It's always fun. And then we're on to that miserable stretch. Before you know it, it will be Super Bowl weekend, and then you're looking at like 8 months of nothing. So enjoy these last couple of weeks while they're here, even if you're losing.
Subscription. It's fucking Cyborg. Read it. I want MVP magazine subscription. As Cyborg. As I want MVP magazine subscription. As Cyborg. Fucking chalk.